Hey guys.
Hi, sorry about the delay. There's been some weird internet problems we've been having, but it seems to be working now, so let's hope it stays working the whole time.
Yeah, it keeps just disappearing, and of course, as soon as we need to do something, it's when it leaves.
Yes. So let us know if you're watching us to let us know that it's working.
We had a couple people waiting already.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys can see us now.
Good. So we're going to start off with talking about the giveaways for this week, and then we'll do our rant. Natalie might talk about the book club or not. Apparently not.
No, we do have a question from the book though that we'll.
Okay, good. And then we'll get into questions. So we thought we'd do it a little bit differently this month, and in honor of Easter, when you comment with hashtag NAMA on Patreon.
They should also tell us which of the items they're interested in.
Yeah. There are 3 items that we're giving away, but let me talk about the process first.
They need to include that in the hashtag is what I'm saying.
No, when they win, they can send us.
Okay.
Yeah. So hashtag NAMA, and we're going to put your name into an Easter egg, and we're going to put all the Easter eggs in a pile, and my dog Lumi is going to retrieve a random one from the pile, and that's who wins. We're going to give away 3 prizes today. 3?
Yep.
Okay, what are they?
2 t-shirts and a collar.
So when you win, you got to let us know which one you want. The collar?
So we've got a kind of a small to medium buckle collar.
It's adjustable.
Yep. But not too tiny or too small, obviously.
Yeah.
Silver and purple. And then we have a Showdown number 3 Ready, Set, Go shirt. And this is a medium. And then one of our original red Ready, Set, Go shirts. And this is a small. So a small shirt, a medium shirt, and a collar.
There you go. So if you're watching this, make sure to comment hashtag NAMA to be entered into the giveaway. And we are going to draw that at the end of the episode.
Yeah, so I might be writing your names down.
Yeah, we'll be watching as we go. And we'll mention it a couple times. Maybe Natalie can real quick comment on the video on Patreon to let people know so that if they join in late, they can jump in. Welcome Kelly and Judy and Pamela and the other Judy and Melissa and Wendy. Hope you guys are all doing well. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's do a rant. So
what are we ranting about today?
I was having a conversation with someone that brought something to my mind about sportsmanship and
Hey, we
Hey,
hope
we're back.
Hopefully
Okay.
you guys are still here. Sorry about that.
Our internet is really throwing a fit, so hopefully that doesn't happen too often. So what I was saying was, from the point of view of a competitor, there's no such thing as a bad hide. That when you come from a trial and you say that was a bad hide, you're only down talking yourself. I mean, you're just saying your dog couldn't do it, and this is especially true when there are dogs who succeeded. It's better for me, rather than just saying, oh, there's a bad hide, there's nothing I can do about it. I find it more motivating for myself to say, hey, there are some dogs who did this right. What do I need to be doing so that I'm one of those dogs? What could I do to make sure I'm the only dog who got that hide at a trial? Or another way of looking at it is, how can I perform the best I can into that condition? I've been to some trials where no dogs have titled, and people feel very strongly about that first place that they ended up getting, even though they didn't title. They were one of the only dogs to get one of the hides or do something like that. And that can be more rewarding than anything. And I think when you judge yourself based on a title, a ribbon, or something along those lines, that you're belittling your dog and yourself. The environment is what it is. Sometimes the environment isn't what we'd like it to be, but there's no such thing as a bad hide. There's only things that you need to go home and train so that you're more prepared next time.
Yeah.
You have anything to add about that?
I don't think so.
To me, that's a sportsmanship thing. That's the way I want my students to compete. I don't want them complaining about the trial, about the hide placements. Just,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really just the way that you frame things to be a better sports person.
Yes.
And have that good attitude. Because, I definitely have had trials where I was really frustrated by, usually more by judging calls than hide placement, but hide placement too, where I felt like it wasn't what I expected from that level of trial, but my expectations may have just been wrong. Or, I may have had a bunch of trials that were one way and expected things to continue that way, to be that way, and that was unreasonable. And even if I've done, I counted up the number of trials that I've done at one point. I don't remember what it was, but 50 or 60 or something like that, or more. And, so my brain is always kind of calculating those, how has it been through all these different trials? And that may lead me to think things about trial that aren't true.
Yeah.
And also maybe get really complacent about how I am practicing, because I kind of have a feel for what an NW3 is going to be like. I know people got really complacent with elite trials in preparation for nationals because they got a little more samish, which is not really how they're written in the rules. And they've gotten less samish since then, and it's actually a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
And I would prefer that there's a little more freedom in what I could expect. And with that may come some hides that I'm not too happy with, but then I go.
Which is difficult because when you do stuff people don't expect, they get upset, right? But I want to reiterate one thing, which is that I'm fully aware that from a judging standpoint, from a CO standpoint, from a trainer standpoint, there are bad hides. What I'm talking about is how you frame it when that happens to you.
Yeah.
Right? That you shouldn't frame it as that was just a bad hide.
That's a lazy cop-out answer of, oh, well, the CO should have just done a better job, instead of, I should prepare myself and my dog to be ready for anything. My NW1 dog to be ready for NW3 or Elite Search. It's not that I will have those in trial, but that if I do have something, that I can conquer it. And if I fail because I didn't adequately prepare myself or my dog, that's on me.
Yeah.
At least as much as it's on.
And you can just have bad days, and it can be a fluke and something like that. And that's understandable. Like, I know some people tell themselves this to give them an out so that they don't get mad at their performance, right? So instead of getting mad at your performance, get mad at the hide. I've seen this in herding a lot, where people get mad at the sheep. It was a bad set of sheep. It's like, well, hey, look, what do you do if you're a rancher on a farm and you got a bad set of sheep? You freaking work them, right?
Or you sell them.
Yeah, or you sell them. Yeah, you eat them that night, right?
Yeah.
No, so that if you're telling yourself that to make yourself feel better after a bad day, then you should really consider what
what are you expecting of yourself and your dog?
Yeah, exactly.
How much are you giving yourself a pass?
And also that you could be telling yourself a lie that could be detrimental to your future ability to perform.
Yeah, well, I remember the first trial Michael took Hazel to for sheep herding. It was a rough setup where there was a really strong draw for the sheep to want to run up this hill. And
so bad that the two setup dogs, they had 2 dogs at the hill setting sheep out. The sheep just ran through both dogs.
Yeah. So a lot of people there, us included, were like, holy crap, like there's no way we can really conquer this. And there was definitely some moaning going on. But I saw some dogs do it. Hazel didn't. She wasn't experienced enough or fast enough. And maybe, there may be some handling things Micah could have done to potentially give more success. But we saw a couple really nice dogs just knock it out of the park.
Yes.
And, some of that's talent. Some of it is really good handling and strategizing. But just saying, it's impossible isn't the answer.
Correct. Yes. So if you're just tuning in, a reminder that comment #NAMA and your name will go into one of these Easter eggs that Lumi will randomly retrieve, and you'll earn one of 3 prizes that you will pick when you win. Should we get straight to questions?
Yes. I am working on writing people's names down so I don't end up with a huge
looks
list
like we got quite a few names, so that's a good thing.
Yes. Thank you all for being here in spite of our weird internet issues.
Okay. So this first question is that
the first question from Kelly is, what are we drinking?
Oh, what are we drinking? Yeah. I'm drinking port. We should have a vote on what's the official drink of NAMA.
Yes.
I feel like it should be something like with birch beer or, something with the odors, or what did we talk about recently?
Well, root beer, some root beers have all 3 odors in them.
There was something about, was it a tequila?
Oh, there might have been. I don't remember.
I can't remember, but there was I thought it had some pun or connection to Nosework, but now.
Probably, if anyone remembers,
let
us know. And I'm drinking Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah. So, what are you guys drinking? Are you guys drinking while you're watching this? Let us know.
Even if it's hot chocolate or milk
or water.
Or water.
I don't know. Yeah.
Like healthy people.
Yeah, you can drink whatever you want. We're not trying to cause people to drink who don't want to drink. That's not what we're trying to do here. Okay. So, starting tracking class with Seal soon. Do you recommend a different harness other than his Nosework harness? To add to my question, can I use protection work harness? So yeah, if you compete in multiple dog sports, the more context cues you use to differentiate between them, the better. And that even goes for within a sport, obviously. So, having a special kind of harness on when you're doing the tracking portion of protection sport versus the agitation versus the obedience, that's all very, very useful.
Or some people will even have a competition collar that's like extra fancy, extra exciting, that they just use when they're like kind of putting out their best. Yeah. So yes, the more context cues you give the dog, the better. We personally use collars for the dog because we do use harnesses for other things. But that's not the only context cue that matters. You can use just collars or just harnesses, provided you have enough context cues, and you can't have too much. Special set of shoes, special leash, special treats. Obviously, you don't want to get boring with your rewards, but if a special way of delivering reward, special routine at the start line, special routine the morning of a trial, the morning of training, right? All of these things. In fact, for our audience watching, what are some of the things that you do intentionally or unintentionally that signals your dog that it's time to do nose work? A lot of people are surprised when they grab the nose work bag that the dog knows they're doing nose work, and that they're different when they grab the nose work bag versus the agility bag, right? That's not even something you're doing to the dog. It's just something you're picking up and putting in the car. Yeah. So, well, one thing that I really intentionally do on competition days is that I feed my dog half of her daily food before we leave the house for the trial, or before we leave the hotel or whatever it is, which I don't normally do. She doesn't normally get breakfast unless we happen to be training in the morning, but that wouldn't be a big like set portion of food. It would be training treats. So that, and I do that to help her get into competition gear, and then also to help her not be insane about the treats when we're competing.
Yeah, and that works in the reverse too. I've had students who normally feed their dogs breakfast who abstain from breakfast the day of a nose work class, and they say their dog gets freaking excited when they don't feed them breakfast. They're like, it's nose work day. And so it's kind of funny that they get excited when they're not feeding them.
Yeah, and it all depends on the dog's food drive and, weight and various things.
Absolutely. But yeah, like I said, the more context cues, the better. What do you do? What does your dog respond to? What is the real cue to your dog that lets them know they're doing nose work? When is the moment that they know it's nose work day? Is it a special pair of shoes? Is it that you turn on the car at a certain time of day? Is it when you turn on that special road? What is it? Is it the crate? Is it, what are the things for you? And that way we can put together a big list of context cues that people can use. And if you use like 5 or 6 or more of those, then you are really onto something good.
Yeah. To answer the question more specifically, I don't remember exactly what your nose work harness looks like, but I would imagine that it's not a tracking harness. In the way that it's built, usually, you have the tracking harness, you want to put a lot of pressure into the chest, and I think your nose work harness comes across the shoulders like that. So I would probably use a different one, even just in the setup of the harness, as well as it being a different context cue.
Yeah, and about the protection sport harness, that could be a potentially dangerous thing if a trainer is getting a dog excited to go and hunt, and the dog is wearing its agitation collar, and they think, oh, I should go out and bite him. That could be a potentially confusing situation that's not worth having. So
yeah,
and that goes for even if the harness is similar to the agitation collar, that could be dangerous. So, worth thinking about.
Yeah,
I've had dogs that I've got excited to do nose work that look like, oh my gosh, I get to bite him. It's like, whoa, let's slow down there.
Yes. With those context cues.
Absolutely. Okay, next question. My students are currently new to odor. I have a class that just finished. And
okay,
we're back. Okay. So fortunately, I hadn't answered it. I've been wanting to do a rant about this for a while, so maybe this will be my rant. But we do something very bizarre in the world of nose work that they don't do in any other dog sport, in any other scent sports, which is ignore the dog when they find it, essentially, or ignore the hide when the dog finds it. So let me use hunting as an example. So I'm out hunting with my dog points a bird. And I go, good dog, okay, find another one. No, you would never do that to your dog. The dog's pointing to the bird. You want the bird.
That's the job that you were.
That's what you're asking him to do. The dog would never leave to go with you. That would be crazy. And if the dog did leave the bird, it would be considered a severe lack of drive. So no, you flush the bird, you shoot the bird, you pick the bird up, you put it in your pouch. Okay? Barn hunt. You don't go, good job, you found the rat, find another one. No, you pick up the rat, you hand it to the judge. Tracking. You find the article, you pick it up, you put it in your pocket. Okay? Every other scent sport does it this way. Nose work is the only one where we expect the dog to ignore the odor and leave it there while they go and find another one. We don't expect this in the food stage because they eat the food. I think it's absurd. And I think in training, you should basically always pick up a hide after the dog finds it. This teaches the dog that it's the hide that's important, not the behavior. right? Because they see you physically taking it and putting it in your pocket. So the dog says, oh, that's important to you. There is something to be said about insight learning in nose work, that dogs can have ideas about what it is that they're trying to do and not just be operantly trained, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is how we
there are a
operantly
lot of
train them.
ways to use that in nose work too, to make things clearer for the dog.
So this is how I do multiple hides. I personally want my multiple odor searches to look like several single hide searches. So if there are 3 hides out there, it seems like 3 one-hide searches. So in other words, the dog acquires odor, sources odor, finds odor, and then we move to the next one. I don't like it when it seems like a multiple odor search. I think that's bad.
When the dog's going, here's an odor cone, here's an odor cone, here's an odor cone. Maybe I'll come back and start telling you about this one.
Yeah.
Wasting a lot of time going back and forth. We think that the dogs need to do that to work out converging odor, but most of the time they don't. The odor problems are not actually that complicated. We just trained them to do it.
I'm not convinced that converging odor is a thing, or at least not as much of a thing as people make it out to be. So here's an example. How come we don't tend to see converging odor problems at the food primary stage, but we do at odor? Why is that? In my opinion, it's because it's an odor obedience problem. Okay, the dog doesn't know how to pursue a single odor. With food, it's easy. They get to a convergence point, right? The dog doesn't hem and haw and frustrate themselves. And this is, an odor. People freak out. Oh, it should be birch and anise, so it's not confusing. You don't do a birch and a birch hide. That's nonsense. In the food stage, here's hot dog, here's hot dog. And the dog goes to the convergence points and immediately makes a decision about one or the other. It's effortless. So we're doing something wrong when we introduce the odor that causes converging problems, in my opinion. Now, that said, I have seen true convergence problems where the dog was unable to find it, but it usually isn't solved by letting the dog work it out. It's usually solved by removing one of the hides. And what you find out, it's not that there was a convergence problem, it's that both hides were hard individually. And so when you combined them, they were extra hard.
Yeah, and sometimes you can also make a small change in the search area or something to fix those.
So, and I know I'll probably get a lot of hate for that, for thinking that, but I really think that if you teach a dog to stick to one odor and find it, that converging problems don't exist. Now they can exist in a trial where the handler is having trouble reading what's happening, but they don't exist to the dog. And I've tested that with my own dogs, not doing very many multiple hides, and the dogs don't have problems when I do a multiple hide problem. The only thing that happens is maybe they get a little bit more aroused because they smell more odor in the environment. And
I think all these things are all about balance. So you want to balance on the side of single odor problems that the dog is completing efficiently and well, and not running off to do other things, not getting distracted by the environment or other things. And then you want to balance that with small amounts of multiple hide problems where they have enough experience with those that they can work them out quickly and efficiently in trial, and they're not, either so bothered by it or confused or aroused by it that they can't work it out in a reasonable amount of time. And then you go back to balancing that with single hide searches and complex single hide searches, not just easy on the floor, sitting on a chair single hide searches. And so it's about, where your balance is, where your single hide searches are a lot higher than your multi-hide. And you're aware of what you want your criteria to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I do multiple odor problems more at the primary stage than the odor stage. Once we get on odor, I think you can do them in a way that isn't detrimental to the dog in the food stage, because dogs tend not to catalog at the food stage, but once you put them on odor, they often do, because we don't build odor obedience properly. I don't do anything special to add a second hide. I just do it. But from day one, I'm building odor obedience with my dog. So the first time the dog ever smells odor, they get the paired treat, and they're getting 3 individual reward moments at least from the handler. So the dog is really getting paid on that odor, and then the handler picks up the hide. So that's always the way the dog has seen it. So when there's a second hide, they get to an odor, they get paid multiple times, the handler picks up the odor, the dog just takes off and keeps searching, finds another hide, and that same process happens again. It's really non-complicated, which is something I really love about this, is that it uncomplicates it. It doesn't need to be as complicated as it is. I don't think having a dog leave an odor on their own is a good thing. I personally think it's a bad thing. I think it shows a lack of odor obedience, even if it's showing it's showing hunt drive, good hunt drive, but I don't think you have to trade odor obedience for hunt drive. You can have both if you train correctly.
Yeah, again, with the balance. And I think that once you don't even really worry about the dog being able to move on in the slightest until your dog is working on NW2. And then you as a handler learn how to manage the dog in the search area and how you want them to leave odor for competition, but still with the balance in practice of picking up the hides.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One follow-up comment on our rant earlier was that she says she knows people in all sports who judge shop. And so that means, they look for the judge they want to show under so that they have a good
say,
trial.
I'm not going to that agility trial because I don't like that judge.
And that she says, I always have felt that if we are on our game that day, we can qualify. And I want to take that one step further, that the qualifications under a difficult judge mean more, right? And everyone's expression of who they are is valid. So if you want those easy victories, I know a lot of people who about themselves and they don't compete in other venues because those ribbons are harder to come by. I get that. But for me, I don't get enough out of the easy ribbons. Actually, sorry about that, guys. If you do the hides this way, where you pick up the hides after you reward and after the dog's found it, you can actually introduce multiple odors on day one. If you wanted to. I wouldn't do it with my own dog, but like, for example, with my dog Catfish, I could introduce him on a multiple odor search with 5 hides. I just have to have good timing, reward, pick up. Let him go off and find it. And
it would just feel like...
It would feel like 5 single hide searches. The dog found another one. There's another one. There's another one.
Although if you saw our video from earlier this afternoon with Lumi and Catfish, we did a multi-hide food search, which normally we feel pretty safe with, like Michael was just talking about. But we noted at the time there was one hide that was a little harder for him, and he noticed it and then either got sucked into another hide or went, I don't know what that one's doing. I'm going to go back to that. Went and found the other 2 and then eventually came back to that and had to work it a bit. And so that's one where if we had known, we would have set that harder hide by itself and have him practice working that out instead of fooling around and doing other things.
Absolutely.
Even though, we go, oh, great, he found other hides. That's wonderful. But like Michael said, you don't want to instill that leaving to find easier hides.
And that's definitely something for me that I'd want to work out in the primary stage before we went on odor. It's annoying to get on odor and then find out you have a cataloging problem.
Yeah, so you find this out, and then you go back to doing some harder single hide searches with food, and then you go back to doing some multi-hide searches and see, where you're at and how much you've improved.
Yeah.
And the food stage is so natural, you can experiment a lot more without really messing up your trial stuff later with odor.
Yeah. It's everything for me right now, obviously because I'm kind of exploring the world of hunting dog training. Everything goes back to hunting dog training for me. And it's very interesting to me that the way they train their dogs, if you think of birds as hides, because they are, is they do lots and lots of blank searches, lots of drills on one bird building odor obedience, which they call birdiness. And every now and then they do a multiple bird search. And the reason they do it is to build stamina. That's it, right? And if the dog left the bird to find another bird, they would be like, oh man, you need to go back to basics. You know, it would be like way back to the basics to fix that. So
Yeah.
Okay, so also for the same students in both classes, does the threshold exercise work, perhaps without distraction part, at least first, for their levels? I think you said something about with newer students, you'd want them to search all along a wall, a straight line after threshold, or can I do the threshold exercise with them and then add the straight line? If I had a threshold hide and other hides along the straight line right away, a first pass, I wondered if the threshold hide wouldn't have the draw and the threshold exercise would lose its power. Though, of course, hunting on a hunt drive is so important. So I think one, if you watch the catfish lesson I did today, because I addressed this exact issue, which is there's no reason not to introduce distractions as early as possible. I did it with catfish today, lesson 4. Okay. Absolutely, you could do the threshold hide. You can do it with food dogs. You absolutely teach the dog that doorways are valid, important areas. Now, a lot of the patterning work I do with dogs in the beginning stages, I do quietly in my own notes without the handlers knowing. So I'll set hides by the doorway. I'll set hides along the wall. I'll set hides here and there, but I won't tell the people what I'm doing because they're not ready for that information yet. Okay. Every now and then I have a student who is, and I'll explain to them exactly what I'm doing and why, but the average person isn't ready. I am pattern training the dog, whether and you are pattern training their dogs, whether you realize it or not. Every hide you set puts an expectation in your dog's head. And that expectation could be run to the center of the room or run to the door.
Yep.
Or run to the corner or look high or look low.
Or only check boxes.
Yeah. And so you need to be fully aware of and thoughtful about all of the assumptions you might be creating. And that is what pattern training is. It's becoming mindful about hide placement, in my opinion. So yeah, normally when I'm introducing my students to patterning, I'm partially introducing them to handling. So I'll usually start with a straight line, just of containers. And I talk to handlers about how to move and how your movement affects your dog's movement. Then I'll introduce corners. Inside corners first, then outside corners. And outside corners lead to thresholds because the threshold is an outside corner. I'm planning on getting a corner lesson video up at some point. So now that the weather is a little better, I should be able to do that soon. So keep an eye out for that. But you can be doing all of this stuff behind the scenes. You don't have to do it explicitly. But if you want to do it explicitly, dogs could do it. And they can do it with the distractions. There's no reason. People totally underestimate what their dogs can do. The dogs can handle it. The dogs can handle it as long as you have a skilled eye and you know when to adjust for each individual dog. I wouldn't hesitate.
I have a drive building class right now that is mixed level. So I have 2 dogs on primary and 3 or 4 dogs on odor, and they've been all doing it for varying lengths of time, although the 2 food dogs started with me. And I've been doing a lot more threshold stuff with them as a more beginning class than I used to, in part because I want to instill some good start routine habits in the handlers. With watching their dog when they come up to start and not just sort of running through the door and throwing them into the center of the room. And I've been doing some of that with just hide placement and maybe mentioning, maybe not, and some of it with some specific drills of, where they can stand and not to move into the room too quickly and things like that. And I feel like that is some sort of really basic handling that doesn't take as much work and not as much footwork moving out to 45-degree angle and things like that. It's just a very basic of how to come into a room appropriately. So that's what I'm experimenting with.
Yep. Good. Another thing that I've been really thinking about recently is that if you build Hunt Drive correctly, you will get the pattern for free. I did this with several of my students recently that we built some Hunt Drive, and I was pointing out to them, look at how the dog was taking the corner. Look at how the dog detailed certain areas of the search area. You get the pattern for free if you have Hunt Drive.
Because it's efficient.
Yeah, it's efficient. Dogs don't want to miss things. So if you have Hunt Drive and odor obedience, you also have patterns by default. There's only a few exceptions, which are the accidental patterns we've trained, which is run through the doorway. We've trained that. That isn't natural.
Yeah, dogs normally don't just run out to the center of something.
Yeah.
They check the edges.
Or here's another one. Skip the doors of a vehicle and check the wheel wells. Okay, that's a pattern we train because we think, oh, I can't stick a hide on the door of a vehicle because the dog will see it. Like, that's nonsense. Who cares if the dog sees it? That's not the point. The point is the hide could be anywhere, and the dog needs to know that.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, our job to really notice the pattern and ideas that we're setting up, the assumptions. And setting assumptions and then breaking them and making sure that the dog is still paying attention.
Yeah.
It's really important. Next question.
You want to read the next question? It's about the book. Here, I'll pull it up for you.
I wish I had the book in front of me. I don't know where I put it.
Top of the page.
Okay, I had a question from the Noswork-Handler book regarding patterns and when to use what: quartering, serpentine, spiral, etc. That's a really big question. Have we covered that in some of our lesson videos?
Maybe. I don't know. What is the?
Well, I'm not sure what the serpentine is. I wanted to look at the book. I don't remember right now. Maybe some of you remember. But
Natalie is dropping the ball in the book club. You guys need to
bit.
nag her about that.
Yeah. But quartering is often used in like large exterior searches where you go cut back and forth across the wind to help the dog pick it up or give them the best opportunity to pick up odor.
Something I want to say right now, because it's become a personal goal of mine, is to change the way people use language. So I don't call what this is, I don't call that a pattern. I call that a strategy. Okay, because
that's a good point.
There's two distinct concepts being lumped into patterning, which is what we were talking about earlier, which is using hide placement to change the dog's behavior in a search environment. And then there's the strategy that a handler employs to approach search area coverage. Strategy, patterns.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing, not even remotely.
Yeah, and very often they're lumped together, and I'm not sure exactly what the language is that's used in the book.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people use patterns to use both, but I want my people to understand there's two concepts there, and we need to distinguish between them.
Yeah, and then spirals are used to get your dog back on the line, the straight line they were on that they've deviated from. So say this is like a wall, and you were going along this way, and then the dog ended up back here, but you want to get back to this wall so you don't miss anything. What?
Are you sure that's how he's using spiral?
I'm pretty sure because
he's not talking about spiraling outward from a location?
I don't think so, though he might be. But we can talk about that too. Because he has all those line drills.
Yeah, but not a lot of people call them spirals. In fact, a lot of people criticize me for calling them spirals.
Okay, well then describe that spiral. And I will do my research on the book.
Well, because it sounds like quartering, serpentine, and spiral are all describing search area coverage strategies.
Yeah.
So you can go back and forth through a search environment, or you can swing around in bigger and bigger loops. But I don't know because I haven't actually read the book.
Well, maybe you should do your homework.
I should actually read it.
But a lot of search strategy stuff comes down to what the wind is doing, how your dog naturally searches, what the search area is. Is it a big open space? Is it a super crowded space?
What the rules are, time pressure, or is precision more important? Like, there's a huge strategy difference between Elite Division and NW3, where you must not miss any odors and you must not call any falses. Whereas in Elite, you got 3 free falses and missing hides, you just lose some points, but you want to try to get them. So it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about spiraling out from a middle point, I don't know really when I would ever specifically use something like that in trial, because I feel like I would be covering so much of the same area over and over again.
You use it in, I'll tell you when you use it, not in sport dog training, but in bomb dog training. I actually heard Ron talking about this, that there had been a lot of bomb terrorists, I guess, who would set up a bomb, blow it up, and then when the medics would come into and emergency personnel would come in, a second bomb would go up and take all them out. So what they were training bomb dog teams to do was when they located a bomb, they would spiral out to a safe distance before calling the bomb squad. Because if they call the bomb squad was like, okay, we'll go in. He's like, wait, do you want me to check for more bombs? Like, nope, we got it covered. So you spiral out to a bit safe distance. And when you get to that safe distance, then you tell the bomb squad to go in.
Yeah, and so that makes perfect sense for explosives training. Doesn't make any sense for nosework search strategies.
That said, there may be a situation where that comes in handy. Who knows if in summit trials that might be a useful thing.
Could be. And there, I mean, your you could have container searches even set in a spiral where you would, of course, obviously spiral. So I would have to think about that some more. But in general, I like to cut across the wind more, or do more of a perimeter.
I think that's what he's calling quartering. I could be wrong, which would be like cutting a field into quarters. But that's not what hunters mean when they say quartering. When they say quartering, they mean serpentining up and down a field.
Yeah, so I'm going to reread that chapter and then post about it on Patreon.
There we go. So to be continued. Okay, next question. Oh, if you have tuned in recently, comment on Patreon with #NAMA, and you will be entered to win one of our 3 prizes. We're going to put your name in an Easter egg. We're going to toss it out to a pile, and my dog will retrieve 3 of them for you guys. Okay, Apple is a therapy dog. We go to a university, usually an exterior setting, and a group home for teenage boys, usually an interior setting. Among other places to provide comfort to and help them de-stress. I'm thinking about bringing odor and asking the students, teenagers, to hide the odor for us. I'm wondering what would be the best way to do this. Should we run blind? Should we pair? Any parameters I should give the student teenagers on where to put the hide? One hide or multiple hides? Any other thoughts on how to make this fun for the students and a good training exercise for us? Yeah, this is a good question. It's a fun thing to do, and I highly recommend it. I don't recommend doing it blind. And here's why. Partly it's because there are some things when you do activities at a high level, there are some things that are just lost on people. So whether it's blind or not blind, the average person who's never done nose work before doesn't see a difference. It looks the same. A dog sniffing around and finding an odor. They don't know that you didn't know where it is, even if you tell them, right? Unless you maybe like hammer that point home. But you know that often happens. To use an example, when I was learning to play violin, I'm not very good, okay? But I'd been playing violin for a couple years, and I was squeaky and still not very good, and people knew that I wasn't good. But then I had one of my friends start to learn violin as well because he enjoyed what I was doing. And he took it for a couple months, and he was like, oh my gosh, you were so much better than I thought you were based on listening. So my point is, to the outside, they can't hear what's going on in my violin playing. To the outside, they can't see what's going on in your nose work training. So in my opinion, set something easy. Get them to set something very simple that the dog will succeed in, because that's more impressive to them. It's more impressive to watch the dog succeed.
And what's impressive is also to watch the dog work more or less on their own. Like, it's not impressive really. I mean, it can kind of be, but not usually very impressive to watch someone drag a dog around and like, oh, look, they sat at the odor.
Yeah.
But to watch a dog out at the end of a 10-foot line hunting and then find the odor.
And do a head snap.
Yeah, do a head snap and stop and tell you about it. That is cool looking. And you might give them some sort of height parameter, like don't go above 3 feet or 2 feet.
The easiest way to do it would be to tell them specific things like either bring containers, say put it in a container, or if they're chairs, put it on a chair. That way you know, unless the students are real out-of-the-box thinkers and they take the chair and put it up on a cabinet, right? That would have been me. But as long as they're not that way, you've somewhat controlled the situation in a way that isn't overt. You're not telling them where to put it, but you've set the criteria in such a way that you know your dog will succeed. Let's see, is there anything else? I would recommend at first, I would build into it. So if you're gonna do this, and you might do it multiple times, start slow. Start with 1 hide, then go with 2. And then as you get to know them better, here, set some hides out. Don't tell me where they are this time. Because now that they've seen you do it a few times, now that you don't watch it, now they get it because they're learning each time you show it to them. You're teaching them, right?
Yeah.
And now a blind search is exciting. Or Apple's a therapy dog. Why don't you let one of them run the dog? Which would be good training for Apple. And it would be really fun for a kid to run. So you tell them, when you think the dog's found it, you say alert, you do that whole thing and they'll have a blast. I love doing that with people who come visit my class. I did that the other day. I had someone, I did a demo of my dog doing some heel work, and they thought it was really impressive. And they said, would the dog do that with anyone? I was like, maybe. Here, take the toy. And so I handed the toy to the guy, and the dog did some beautiful heel work, and he was super impressed. It was more exciting for him that the dog healed with him than all the fancy stuff I was doing.
Yeah.
Even though all he did was like take 3 steps forward. He thought it was the coolest thing in the world, you know, and I was doing spins and backups and all sorts of things. It doesn't matter because he doesn't know how much work goes into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next, are dogs ever allowed to compete wearing a belly band? Their logic went, this person's logic went something like this. If bitches in heat are allowed to run at the end of the running order wearing panties, why not a belly band? Does the reason matter, medical versus behavioral? What about a dog that needs doggles for light sensitivity? So let's start with the belly band. I can only speak for NACSW. They do not allow dogs to compete with belly bands on for a couple reasons. One, a belly band is not like a diaper that catches a little minute amount of blood. Belly bands will still leak if the dog pees in them and is marking. Also, marking is a behavioral issue. It's not like bleeding. Bleeding is not a behavior issue. You can't teach them not to do that on command.
Right. Well, and if they do have a medical issue that makes them incontinent and they can't hold it, that really sucks.
Yeah,
and they can't just have dogs dribbling pee all over the place, you know, because they're renting these locations.
Well, and that's the other thing. They've put out long statements about this in the past, and they've struggled with this exact question. But they felt like allowing dogs with incontinence to compete would actually mean that we would lose a lot of locations for competing. So because the people who rent these locations to us often don't like dogs.
Yeah.
And they're going out of their way to allow dogs here. And then they see a dog come in dribbling pee or wearing a belly band and trying to mark inside of an interior or something like that. It looks really bad, you know, and even honestly, even dogs in heat, it looks kind of bad.
It does. I mean, a dog wearing panties is not like a pleasant sight.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they did change that at some point. I think some people would be really upset about that, but
I mean, the one thing about that is that you can very easily explain the dog is in season. They're wearing that so that they don't make any messes anywhere. And it's actually not that common.
Yeah.
I've run maybe 3 or 4 times with the dog in season. And your average trial, there aren't any. And then there may be less than a quarter of it. I don't know what the real statistics are, but less than a quarter of the time that I see, there's one and hardly ever more than one. So it's not very many. Whereas if you started saying that belly bands are allowed, you would see like half the dogs in a given trial wearing belly bands.
Yeah, because who wouldn't wear a belly band? You know, it's like you could take that off the table as a way to potentially fail. That said, another thing that's important to mention is that competition is a privilege, not a right. You know, and it doesn't prevent you from enjoying the activity, from going to classes, going to our mock events. You could potentially wear a belly band in those or train.
No one's ever actually asked that.
No one's ever asked, but
also like AKC does not allow bitches in season.
Yeah, competition isn't really designed for just your recreational activity. It's designed as a standard, and that standard is they're trying to measure dogs and handlers' aptitudes. So a dog that has to wear a belly band, if it's for a medical reason, I get that, but unfortunately that might exclude you from the criteria they're looking to test.
Yeah, and it's also with the scale of trials down, you know, hundreds of trials and thousands of dogs a year, making those individual exceptions is just not something that can be undertaken.
Yeah. Now, about doggles. Yeah, you can wear those. You can wear.
You and your dog can wear.
Yeah, you can. The rule on that kind of accessory is if it's functional, you're allowed to wear it. If
a cooling coat.
A cooling coat you're allowed to wear. You're allowed to wear booties on the dog's feet to keep them cool, or if they're afraid of surface issues. But you're not allowed to wear something for ornamental purposes. So don't put a pair of, Elton John sunglasses on your dog. They won't allow that.
But yeah, I know someone who has a dog with eye problems, and she runs into, or she at one point was running into a lot of things. She was really tentative because she's afraid of running into things, and she wears pretty sizable doggles, and they work very well for her.
Yeah. Okay. Next. If I can't practice outdoors or take my practice on the road, what can I do at home to help my dogs? It's a good question. It's a tough one for me to answer because you can practice at home, but just the fact is that it doesn't make as big of an impression as going somewhere else. Even somewhere a little bit else, like a block away. I often tell people that, I get really good performance out of my dogs, okay? And I don't train a lot. My dogs rarely get to train because I'm training other people's dogs. And so they wonder, why do my dogs respond so well if I don't train them? It's because when I train them, I do only very, very basic things, and I do them in a lot of new locations because I'll have to go and do tri-ball demonstrations at the fairgrounds, really distracting location. And what I do is on stage, I build the dog up from scratch like he's never done tri-ball before. That's how I get it. If I just did a whole bunch of training at home and got to a really, really high level of tri-ball at home, that doesn't mean I would be able to do a demo at a fair.
Yeah.
At all. And that's tough. And if your goal is to make it to competitions, you have to train away from home. Your competition is not going to be at your house, so there's really no point training at your house.
Yeah, and for some people, like depending on your reasons for why you can't train outside or go anywhere, maybe if this is a doable thing, you make a point to go to as many different instructors as possible to utilize their locations. But that just depends. Like if someone is homebound and just cannot go anywhere, then I don't know how they're going to compete. But say they're homebound for a year and they've never done anything, and then they sign up for a competition, like Michael's saying, it's probably not going to go very well. And so if your desire is to compete and to cue and to do well, then you're probably going to have to find ways to be able to do other things or just lower your expectations for your dogs.
And I could give you a whole bunch of drills for things you could do at home. But again, what you just said and what I've said already, which is that I don't believe that it would have a huge effect on your ability to perform at a trial.
At a trial, you've got distractions that you cannot replicate at home because the fact is that it's not home, and that's why it's distracting.
Yeah.
Different dog smells, different people, any number of things that your dog may care about. And at home, they live there. So, even if you have sheep in your backyard, they get used to them.
Yeah.
So, unless your trial looks and smells exactly like your house, it's not going to be the same. You're not going to be training in trial-like conditions.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you mentioned here is, what if I can't practice outdoors? So maybe you can't go outdoors because of the weather or because your dog's sick or something like that. You can't go out, or injured and they shouldn't be outside or something like that. If it's a weather issue, there are places you can go. Go to Lowe's, go to Home Depot. There's covered parking lots often. I know Targets often have covered parking lots and things like that you can go and train in. We always recommended our students to go and train with other trainers so they could get more facilities in. Mm-hmm. If you can't go out because your dog's sick, how sick are they? And is it better to just take a break? Sometimes a break is a really good thing. You can do some searches at home, but I really don't believe that those searches at home are going to help you that much.
Yeah, I mean, I think searches at home can be nice, like when you can't do a lot of training, like it's too hot to go anywhere and your dog's kind of bored and you want to burn some mental energy. But I don't do really much serious training at home.
Yeah. I'm sure that's a super dissatisfying answer. And
if you want to, ask us specifically for some things for your situation, to give us some more info on that,
we can definitely
might be able to be a little bit more helpful.
Yeah. That said, if you're looking for drills to do at home, go through our Patreon site. We got lots of drills up there and things for you to play with. And anything you haven't done yet, it's not a bad thing to do at home once or twice before you take it on the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can't go on the road, you're kind of in a bad place. For getting ready for competition, not for enjoying the activity. Enjoying the activity, you don't have to go on the road at all.
Yeah, if competition is not important to you, you could only search at home and have fun with that.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Any insight into training and trialing with one's second dog? So that's a great question, and I'm trying to think how many dogs I'm up to. So I started with Lumi.
I think we both trialed 6 dogs.
So Lumi, Melvin,
Blake.
Porter? No, what was his name?
Oh,
Beckett. Beckett, Blake, Zeus, Ghost.
Mm-hmm. And you did a little bit with that
Portuguese water dog.
Irish water dog, whatever she was.
Yeah, or it was Spanish, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a Spanish water dog.
Is that all?
I think so. I mean, you've done a tiny bit with.
Jordan's dog. Yeah. So some dogs I didn't do. So Ghost was really my second dog.
Second personal dog.
I think the biggest thing I learned from Ghost was that I need to also return to the beginning with my dog and relearn everything. Don't come to your second dog and bring, and I know this is weird, but don't bring the knowledge of your first dog to your second dog.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry about that. What were you saying?
What was I saying? So having trialed something like 6 dogs and having 3 of my own personal Nosework dogs. Sorry, something going on in the background. What was I saying? One thing I've really noticed as I start new dogs is how long it takes them to catch up to the problem-solving abilities of the first dog. So with my second Nosework dog, Hazel, I very quickly knew that she was a baseline, stronger searcher than Cinnamon. She much better stamina, work ethic, didn't try to shortcut, didn't false alert. She was also had some better training, so she was a lot less confused, I think, than Cinnamon was. But it took years for her to be able to problem solve as quickly as Cinnamon, just because Cinnamon had the mileage that she just took time to build. And same when I started Icy. Icy, again, I think an even more, naturally strong searcher than Hazel. I started her younger than Hazel, and she has, just kind of endless drive to do that sort of work. But for more complex problems, she's not as quick as Hazel, even still, to work those out. So you have to give the dog time and exposure to build that mileage to be able to solve those problems. And you can't do that by being a good handler. You have to just expose them to all those different things.
Absolutely.
And give them time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to that. I think, I think there's no better way to get better at Nosework than to start another dog. In fact, I often recommend it to people with one dog who are struggling. I tell them to start a second dog because they can often work out that issue as they learn the second dog.
Even if it's not your dog, borrow someone's dog.
Yeah, borrow a dog. It's the best. You'll never regret it. Just take that other dog, start it from scratch, have some fun. Your dog will thank you for learning, for learning from another teacher, And this is another way to describe it is you're already paying for lessons from another teacher. I want you to pay for a new lesson from a teacher. This teacher happens to be another dog.
Yeah, and even, probably more useful if it's quite different from your dog.
Yeah.
The first
If
dog,
you have a small dog, get a tall one. If you got a tall one, get a small one.
the first dog that I trialed that wasn't mine, I had been trialing Cinnamon. I didn't have any other dogs at that point. And then a friend from Noser class was having to have surgery, and she'd already gotten into a trial, so she asked me to trial her Pomeranian. So different, in size, in mannerisms, in, baseline personality, and he was great to work with. Taught me a lot. My own personal dogs have all been sort of between, 30 and 45 pounds, and, working herding type dogs. But they're still very, very different. And with Cinnamon, she, like I kind of alluded to, she was kind of inconsistent. She fringed or falsed quite a bit. I think she, the training wasn't quite what she needed. And when I started Hazel, when we started doing blind searches, it was so hard for me not to constantly second guess her and treat her like Cinnamon. And she would alert, and I would go, I have no idea, because with Cinnamon, I never knew if she was alerting for real or if she was just trying to get a treat. And I had to really intentionally let that go so that I could trust Hazel and not screw her up by treating her like she was Cinnamon. And sometimes that's harder when your dogs are more similar. Like if you have all labs or something, it's so easy to lump them together and think of them as the same dog. And it's really important to consciously think about how you're going to change when you work the second dog and what works for them. You may even change equipment for yourself to help you make that change. Like maybe with one dog, you use a 10-foot leather leash, and with the other dog, you use a 15-foot biothane, or, something like that, where you can be really intentional about your handling for each dog.
Yeah. While Natalie's stuffing the eggs and making sure we've got everyone's name there, one person added to my comments about doing demos as that she does it with her special ed reading class. She hit a couple singles, then had a student do a single, and then actually 3 students did hides, and then one was really high, and she explained how they're working, and they loved it. And that brings up something that I think is really important, which is verbalize everything. Mm-hmm. You have to treat them like they are idiots, complete idiots. Tell them exactly everything your dog's doing. Don't assume they have any of the knowledge that you've acquired doing nosework classes or doing dog training in general. Mm-hmm. Explain how the nose works. Explains what they're going to look like when they find it. Explain what they're doing. When your dog starts sniffing pee, instead of going, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing, this is what a dog looks like when they're sniffing pee. And I can tell that like because X, Y, and Z.
Intentional.
Exactly. And don't be afraid of that. People will love you for explaining all that stuff.
Yeah, and because they either won't know what they're looking at, or they won't know that they know what they're looking at. And so when you tell them, oh, look, they're the dog caught odor, and you see them working back this way, and oh, the wind is moving this way. And there's just a lot of things that you can point out to them to make them understand what they're seeing, instead of just going, oh yeah, that's nice, the dog's wandering around, and then it stopped, and then you fed it.
Yeah.
And even if you're kind of making stuff up to help them understand, that it helps.
Yes. Okay, so I think we got a few questions left, but we're going to save them for next time because we're getting up to over an hour now. We're going to do our...
Nothing super urgent on the list?
Nothing super urgent now.
If it's terribly urgent, you can ask us again, and we might be able to answer.
Yeah, I'm sure, like, if we need it, if you had a really urgent question, we'll message you, or we can do a mini NAMA sometime during the month. But anyways... We're going to throw out these Easter eggs. I'm going to pull my dog out.
And make sure that I have everybody, because I don't want to leave anybody out.
Okay, this should be fun. If you want to be included in the drawing, here's your last chance to comment #NAMA on our Patreon post. And you will be entered to win a t-shirt or a collar. A medium-sized, nice, custom-made, adjustable buckle collar. Some people typed it twice, I think.
I know. My numbers aren't adding up, so I'm just double-checking. 1, 2.
Counting is so exciting.
Okay, I got everybody.
Okay,
Good.
so
So you want to put all these in a pile?
yeah, I'll go put them out. You can handle the camera, and I'll go get Lumi ready.
I was gonna say this is about as unbiased as we can be with picking somebody.
I'm shuffling them so we don't know
But
which
who
is
knows?
which.
Maybe Lumi's biased. We'll see.
Yeah. You never know. Dogs never cease to surprise. Oh my gosh, Lumi, so many treats today. Okay. Lumi. Okay. Can you see me?
Yep.
Okay.
Everybody wants to get in on this.
Go get it. Good girl. Good girl. Come on. Yes. Good job. So
Flinging them around the
the
room.
first winner is. Oh, let me give you a treat. There you go. The first winner is Diane. Natalie will hold that up in front of the camera.
Schlesinger, so go ahead and tell us if you want the gray t-shirt, red t-shirt, or the collar. And then Michael's retrieving one of the eggs that flew away and lost its
Or never had one.
no,
Oh,
it
there
did. Lumi just threw it. So, oh, you want to put it in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Back in the egg it was in originally.
Oh, she picked
oh,
another
yay,
one. Good
good
girl.
girl.
Okay, let's see who that was.
Well, here, Louis. Yes. Good job. Okay, winner number 2 is Brenda Steely.
Okay, so tell us if you want the red, or well, we'll find out what's left after Diane tells us what she wants.
Okay. Go get it. That's the one you want? Oh, go get it. We gotta bring it all the way here. Yes. Good job. Good job. Let's see. Pamela DeTore.
Okay.
Congratulations. Yes.
So we'll have you guys sort of in order. Tell us what you want, and I'll get it out to you guys. Okay, let me get this.
Give a thank you to Natalie. For Lumi.
Yeah, thank you to Lumi for grabbing those eggs off the floor for you, which she loves
Don't
doing.
thank Natalie. No, just Lumi. So yeah, you guys can claim your prizes. Natalie will work that out with you. Thank you guys for coming up.
Yeah, thanks for being here and dealing with our silly tech issues.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, so Diane says she wants the collar. So then Brenda can tell us if she wants the red t-shirt, which is a small, or the gray t-shirt, which is a medium. And then Pam, you get the red, the other t-shirt. And if the sizing is wrong, I'll see if I can get you a different t-shirt in the right size, depending on what Brenda picks.
Okay, so we'll see you guys next month. Keep an eye out for the newsletter that goes out every month on the 1st to see when the next one will be. And yeah.
Oh, and do we want to quickly talk about, you were going to do a review marathon. Yeah. Do we want to have some submissions?
Yeah, so I have one video submission so far. If you have a video in particular, if you're not in one of the video review slots, if you have a video that you want to be analyzed, that you don't mind being analyzed publicly, send it to me so that I can add it to my video review marathon. So we're going to be doing that in the next couple months.
Yeah, as soon as we get enough to do whatever length we
I'll probably try to get 20 minutes of video, because that should expand out to an hour.
Lots.
Yeah, if you are in my video review slots, you know that a very small video can turn into a very long commentary. So yeah, send us those videos so that we can analyze them. Thanks for staying tuned, and we will see you next time.
And if you have any questions throughout the month, be sure to send those in so that we have them.
Yep.
Bye. I don't know where my Fred Helper's stupid book went.
It's still live.
Oh.